I think you're right. I think, the film, it's kind of a sort of a twisted date film, right? And it may even skew female, but it's I always think of 645 as a romance where things go tragically wrong. They kind of like a Shaggy Dog story where things go from bad to worse.
Yeah, maybe you should have like a cut 2/3 of the way through that just like has a little like nice thing, and they worked it out and everything was fine and they left, and then romance people please leave, and then they can go to the ending of the film.
That's a good idea. It's like Lifetime original version of 645.
Yeah. Hello, everyone. This is David Stark from Watch or Pass, and today I'm excited to talk to Craig Singer, the director of 645, which is coming to theaters on August 6, 2021.
Look at how beautiful this is. Isn't that amazing?
It looks like something out of a Norman Rockwell painting.
Welcome
to the cozy nook.
Why is it so quiet around here, Gene?
There's a little history on the island, that's all.
This is gonna go bad.
Jules is different.
Where's this taking us from? Where's this taking us from? Where's this taking us from?
I'd never hurt you. You know that, right?
How many times I gotta tell you, you can't get off the island.
I don't know who you think you were with, but it wasn't her.
Something happens, dude.
What happens to him?
Don't worry. You kids are gonna have a great day.
Hey, Craig. Craig, can you hear me?
Hey, David.
Hey, Craig. How are you?
Nice to meet you.
Pleasure to meet you too. Thanks so much for joining me. This is Craig Singer, the director of 645, which is being released in 75, I believe, Regal theaters or markets on August 6, 2021.
Correct. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, of course. It's a horror kind of Groundhog Day-like thriller, and I think it's such an interesting film to be coming to theaters, right? It's an indie film that you don't normally see, and then it's coming a fairly wide distribution, I think. So I guess the first question is, how did you find this film? How did this get on your radar? And what was it about the script that appealed to you?
So I had a very small entertainment company in Tribeca that I kind of bootstrapped, and we sold that company to Walt Disney. So I was an executive creative vice president for about 8 years, which took me out of the director's chair. And I actually had the idea for a Groundhog Day thriller horror film years before it became kind of fashionable. So time loop film become like a cottage industry, didn't exist at the time. And I actually think I sent 645 to Blumhouse years before Happy Death Day, which I've never seen that film, but I've heard it. It's kind of a time loop horror film. So I always knew I wanted to make it. And I knew when I exited Disney that I wanted to really, put the pieces together. And we were really blessed that in some strange way, the pandemic almost forced everyone on the planet to live their own version of my film. Everybody lived kind of a day that repeats, the sameness to a day. Mm-hmm. And yeah, really incredibly blessed to be part of the Regal family. And the way that came about is I have a friend of mine. We won the Paris Independent Film Festival Best Feature. They have a genre category, but we won Best Overall, which was a nice shot in the arm. And I was meeting a friend for coffee whose name is Mike Rudnitsky. He'd been in theatrical distribution for about 45 years with companies like MGM. And he was like, Craig, he's like, Craig, I want to see the film. And I said, Mike, why don't you just, wait for our friends and family screening and see the film the way every filmmaker dreams, which is, on the big screen. Mm-hmm. And he, oh no, can I curse on your show or no?
Oh, you can. That's fine. It's not for kids.
Mike was like, fuck that. He's like, send me the film. He was relentless. So I sent him a link, and he watched the film. The next day he calls me up. He's like, this is a real quality film. I said, thank you, Mike. I appreciate the kind words. Maybe you can help us with a New York, LA premiere. And Mike said to me, I think we can do a little bit better than that. Oh, wow. So he playing with Regal, and he said something that made me feel really good. He said, Regal doesn't do favors. He said they really have to believe in the film. And number two, he had sent a subsequent film to Regal after 645, and they came back to him and they said, Mike, this ain't no 645. So that's really good. And also the folks at Regal have been just tremendous. It's like being invited to the World Series. We're in there with films that are $200 million Marvel films, and we're a very, very small film. So it's actually quite exceptional and a privilege to have this opportunity.
Yeah, I know. It's so I remember like I have to sample a few different theaters just to even find some indie films. So I know it's difficult to break in, as an independent film. And it seems like maybe, we'll see what happens, but this seems like the perfect storm where you've got theaters kind of opening up and wanting content and viewers wanting to go to theaters to see something. And so you've got this film that can attract people, or at least, when people go to the theaters, they can put this on their radar, and then you just have a bigger audience, a bigger potential audience.
Yeah, they had actually offered us, almost 500 screens right off the bat, and we felt like we wanted to take a phased approach and see how it goes, and really, I think you're right. I think the film it's kind of a sort of a twisted date film, right? And it may even skew female, but it's I always think of 645 as a romance where things go tragically wrong. They kind of like a Shaggy Dog story where things go from bad to worse.
Yeah, maybe you should have like a cut 2/3 of the way through that just like has a little like nice thing, and they worked it out and everything was fine and they left, and then romance people please leave, and then they can go to the ending of the film.
That's a good idea. It's like lifetime original version of 645.
Yeah, exactly. So I just talked to Augie and Michael, and so I guess they said that you've been kicking this around for a very long time. So I guess what was the shot in the arm that got this to be made? Did you finally just get the right people? Was there some sort of groundswell around it to get this film made? Because I know it's been kind of shooting around for a while.
I think the shot in the arm would be a thing called money. So
makes the world go around.
We went through kind of a cast of characters, quote unquote producers who just promised the moon, and I'm not delusional. I know how difficult it is to raise capital, and so a lot of producers kind of took a crack at it and they couldn't get it done. And then I met a guy at a party in New York, and I'm not really a party person. I was invited to an opening for a friend of mine's company, and he said, we were introduced. He said, yeah, I'm thinking of making a movie. Now as a filmmaker, you hear that a million times, and more often than not, it's kind of cocktail chatter where people, everybody wants to make a movie. Not many people have the fortitude or the ability to make a movie, but this gentleman, Roy DiMaggio, he wanted to make a movie, and he made a movie. So he came through and was an amazing partner. He never kind of second guessed me creatively, let me do my thing, which is, what all filmmakers want, is to kind of be left alone. Mm-hmm. I did a film once at Universal called Dark Ride with Lionsgate, and there was a producer, and he kind of whispered in my ear every 3 days, hey, we're going to probably have to shut down because we run out of cash. So I have the distinction of being one of the few directors who actually directed a film with his head up his ass, because it's not easy to make a film or create any kind of art under those circumstances. So to kind of be left alone, even with a limited budget, you get it all up on the screen. And it was really an incredibly rewarding experience. We all moved into a big old bed and breakfast, and everybody left their egos at the front door. Mm-hmm. We all pitched in, and it was kind of like Coppola filmmaking back in the late 60s, early 70s. It was a really wonderful experience.
And so the bed and breakfast, I love this town. This town it felt so kind of idyllic, and it was interesting that it was so abandoned. I guess, where did you find this? And I guess I understand it wasn't filmed during lockdown, but it really looked like a film that could be made during lockdown. So I guess, where did you find this? How did you get it to be so abandoned?
It's funny. It's, I think my line producer came from California I think she was patient zero with COVID. I think she got everybody sick. It wasn't a thing at the time. Nobody even knew what COVID was. So we kind of powered through. And yeah, this is a seaside resort that kind of buttons up in the off season. And it's something I'd known about. And, I have the luxury of being able to film in my backyard. So there's a comfort level there. I shot a film once in Romania, and I was kind of miserable because when things come up, it's hard to be nimble and quick on your feet when you don't have the resources or the knowledge or, people you can pull in favors from. Whereas here, if we had a problem with the weather or if we lost a location, I kind of knew the area and was able to kind of help contribute to, solving those problems creatively. So yeah, the location's beautiful. I think the only other film that I think was shot in that town was Woody Allen did Stardust Memories there years ago. But it felt right. It just felt like this kind of, and in this script, it's an island. So it's kind of like a block island situation where you're disconnected from the mainland, which leads to a little bit more dread and isolation. And it just happened to really work out.
Yeah, I mean, the ferry part was a nice touch, right? Because then you do get this feeling of isolation rather than them being like, oh well, our car doesn't start or something. Like a ferry is a physical like a border that you can't cross. Like it's a physical impediment to them leaving. So
Kind of like that Shutter Island vibe, right?
yeah, except well, actually maybe yeah, a little bit of mental patient stuff too in there. So yeah, perfect. And so you get the funding and you kind of pull together this very interesting cast. How did you find, Michael and Augie? Had you worked with, I believe Augie was hired first. Had you worked with her before, or was this just looking for a potential lead and she just came across your desk?
My effects artist Vincent turned me on to some of her work, and I fell in love with her. She's just amazing. We became friends, and then she sent me Michael's reel, and I was a little nervous because they're a couple, and I thought, well, what if their on-screen chemistry doesn't match their real life chemistry? And also, what if they fight? What if I don't like his work and she's going to be upset? So I had all these mixed emotions, but Michael blew me away. He's an amazingly talented actor, just as Augie is. And so together, it was like an embarrassment of riches to be able to work with them. We couldn't afford a casting director, so I really had to cast from memory and experience of friends and people I'd worked with this in the past. Armen, for instance, I'd met Armen Garo in the lobby of the Actors Studio. We were watching a Lyle Kessler play, and I walked up to him and I recognized him from American Hustle, and I said, "Hey, I'd love to work with you one day." So that came together, and Thomas G. Waits actually directed my first work off Broadway, a drama called Paradiddle, and Tom and I became very good friends, and it came together like that, piece by piece.
It's so awesome. And I love that you're able to pull together, I think the bar shows up a lot, but it's because you have this kind of eclectic group of people. And so I think that was a nice touch, and you're able to pull together some, personal contacts and things like that to get it going.
Yeah. And I think that was one of the biggest challenges bar is the fact that I didn't want it to be overly repetitious, and because that could become monotonous and boring. And I feel like one of the successes of 645 is we keep the days kind of unique and fresh, even though they do reoccur. Mm-hmm. And there's a nice balance. I feel the film has a nice kind of patina, and I'm really, really proud of the film and how it turned out.
Yeah. But the one thing that does keep occurring is this strange masked, or I think maybe a mask, the strange person keeps finding the couple. So I guess the first question is, was that a mask? Because it looked like a mask, but then like the camera angles are always a little tough to tell. So I can't really necessarily tell if it's a mask or if it's just a person with a very plasticish looking face, or if it's a movie magic.
They lens to create a little bit of a staccato effect, but it was not a mask. It was makeup. And probably one of the better decisions I made was hiring that actor, Josh, because initially I was just going to have an extra stand in, and then I did some tests early on, and I just knew that wasn't going to work. And so Josh was actually a student of Tom Waits, and we spoke about movement, body movement, and it made all the difference. I was really kind of happy with myself for making that. I slept easier knowing that we had an actor who knew how to move, and movement became critical, because just it could kill it. If it's hokey or if it's kind of forced or kind of goofy. So I was really happy with we call him lovingly the Shadow Man.
Yeah, it was I couldn't tell. I couldn't tell if he was wearing a mask, because you see the scenes in the bar where you can see his face. It looks natural. And then yeah, there's something unnatural about him when you see when he does the murders, and yeah, I guess so. It was just good makeup, and then his very, very otherworldly facial expressions.
Yeah, well, yeah. Thank you for that's a interesting observation. Yeah, we were really fortunate. People were just so generous. I mean, my composers just elevated things, took it to the next level, and even some of the source music from my friend David Lotwin and Hakeem Draper. There's an incredible composer named Ron Aniello, and Ron did the split screen segment of the film, which borders on art house. I was a little indulgent because I feel like it makes it, it's easy to do just a slice and dice. And I love that one sequence where you kind of get inside Bobby's head through the split screen. And Ron did that music, and he's actually Bruce Springsteen's producing partner. So he's an incredibly talented guy. He's worked with the best in class, including Bruce. And he was just generous enough, and I'm going to be working with him and my other musical partners. Costas, incredible. He's a protege of Hans Zimmer. we've worked together for many, many years. And so people like that, and, you know, my editor, Sam, incredibly talented, probably the best editor I've ever worked with. Lucas Patasi, my cinematographer, just, you know, we developed a friendship and kind of quickly had that kind of shorthand that you dream, that filmmakers dream about having with a DP, and anything that I would set up, he would just, you know, plus the material, he would make it that much better.
That's awesome. And you know, I'm glad you talked about the music, because I was going to ask about it. I did love, like, you know, this, don't feel like there were a ton of songs, but there were some very nice pieces, especially on the credits, where it just kind of like hits you. And I, you know, I was wondering where that came from, and you know, there we go. There it is.
You know, it's really beautiful music.
Yeah.
There's kind of a sense of nostalgia. It's very bittersweet. There's sort of a return to innocence. And I think, you know, the music and the sound design just are so critical. My sound designer, Marshall Grupp, over at Sound Lounge, I've worked with him for many, many years, and he's always been just so tremendously supportive, and he's such an incredible artist. And you know as well as I, you take the sound design out of a genre film, and it's a very different animal.
Mm-hmm.
So team that really, you know, it's. I was set to do a drama in Ohio with Mickey Rourke and Ray Boom Boom Mancini called Monkey's Nest. 3 days after I wrapped 645, and obviously the pandemic disrupted those plans. But in a way, it was really a blessing, because I got to do the one thing the pandemic encouraged, which is working alone in a dark room. Yeah. So I had a virtual post team, and it gave us the time to really dig into the film and open things up, and the attention to detail that we were afforded was kind of invaluable. A lot of times you're just so pressed and up against it that you don't have the luxury of going over and polishing and opening it up. And you know, I always remember my favorite filmmaker is a guy named Elia Kazan, and when he was doing Streetcar on Broadway, you know, you got to open it up, man. You got to open up the material, and you got to keep digging and digging and digging. So we were really blessed with that opportunity, unfortunately, because of the pandemic, but making lemonade the best we could.
Well, and it's great that you're able to pivot so quickly, because, you know, you do hear about projects that were completely during the pandemic, but I haven't heard that many about projects that were like filmed before and then just edited completely during the pandemic. And that must have been, you know, a pretty jarring switch to have everything be virtual, but you're able to kind of do it and do it seamlessly and make this film, you know, a pandemic project essentially.
It's actually therapeutic, because,
yeah,
you know, we wrapped 2 weeks before the world turned upside down, and the world, I mean, what happened, it was just such a mind fuck for everybody. And to be able just to put your head down and go into the wind and focus on work was really a luxury, because it was so eerie and scary, and there was such uncertainty going on in the world, that to be able to really dig into 645 post was quite something.
Definitely. And so one thing I also wanted to ask is, are there any other iterations of the ending? Were there other ways that this film ended, or was it always this kind of, well, spoiler alert, anyone watching, spoiler, was it always this kind of, you know, Michael comes back to reality and kind of gets to learn what he did? Was there a I don't know, a happier ending, something like that?
Well, two things. One is there's, you know, my favorite version of the 2 hours and 43 minutes, and I'm the only person who probably preferred I like a longer film. I have a decent attention span, and I'm also the filmmaker, so take that with a grain of But no, there were other versions of the ending. But the thing, and it's interesting, we had our premiere in the city, and a lot of people came up to me and they were asking me about the ending. So that to me is extremely satisfying, that type of ambiguity where you don't know if it was, spoiler alert, Michael, or in Michael's head, or is this kind of a purgatory he's created? Did he go to the island alone? Did he, you know what I'm saying? So I think my favorite films always kind of have this level of ambiguity. And I don't think it's my job as the filmmaker to tell you what to feel or think. I'd love that to be something that you kind of ask yourselves and chat amongst your friends with. That's always the most fun for me, is kind of debating and talking film. I'm sure you're as much a lover of cinema as I am. And yeah, I think that's something that we sort of pulled off.
Yeah, no, definitely. I still, you know, I'm still kind of wondering what happened, although you can have a general idea of what, you know, might have happened. But yeah, you still don't necessarily know exactly the timeline, because it does jump around, which, you know, is frustrating. But also, I take your point that it is kind of, you know, nice to have this uncertainty and just end it with not really being sure what happened and what will happen next.
Yeah, I mean, I've watched the film 80 times, so I'm so but it's my perspective is all fucked up. But the ending of that film always kind of gives me chills. When Michael stares into the audience's eyes, it kind of definitely delivers the goods for me anyway, and I hope for the audience as well.
Yeah, we will see on August 6th, 2021. So I know we have limited time, so I want to jump into, I call it the lightning round. It's just short, lightweight questions about the film, things that happened in the film. I want to see how your experiences map to things that occurred. You can feel free to pass on any of them. I won't be offended, but I try to keep them very answerable.
Sure.
So the first question is, have you ever had an alarm, like a wake up alarm go off that you accidentally set far too early than you wanted to?
No, but I had a fire alarm go off in a hotel at like 6 a.m. It just scared the hell out of me. It was very abrupt and very disconcerting and terrifying, actually.
Did you actually have to like leave the hotel and then come back, or did you ignore it?
But it was actually in I think it was Grafton on Sunset in West Hollywood, and the fire alarm had like this strobe light attached to the, like, flashing this glaring silver light in the room. It was really scary. So maybe there's a bit of that in 645.
Yeah, no strobe light, but there is a little bit of a jarring thing to wake up at 6:45. Where is the strangest place that you stayed at?
I've stayed in, I started my career shooting music videos, so I've stayed in some really before what would now be called Airbnbs that were kind of, combination bathroom, closet, shower, all in one, terribly dicey location. So I'm kind of glad that I'm no longer shooting those types of things. But yeah, I've been in the trenches a few times.
Life experiences, I think, is what we call those.
Yeah, look back.
What is the earliest you've woken up on vacation?
I'm a terrible insomniac. I think I've given up sleep Lent. So if I get 3 or 4 hours a night, that's a lot. And so when I travel, it's even worse. So I'm a terrible sleeper generally. When I don't really go on vacation. I'm kind of a workaholic. But when I travel for work, I'm up every few hours, 2, 4, 6, whatever.
It sounds awful. I guess you've just got so much in your head.
Everybody in my life, they're all sleepers, so I'm very jealous, very envious of not all.
That's kind of like when I moved to the East Coast. All my friends were on the West Coast, so I'd wake up at East Coast time and just look, and then no one would be online. Like, what do I do?
Oh, that's great. That's funny.
When was the last time you went somewhere new?
Somewhere new. I love location scouting, so I'm always scouting, and that's one of my favorite aspects of filmmaking is getting to know new areas. And I like kind of desolate locations. I'm kind of a Hopper fanatic, the artist, the painter, and so when I look for kind of landscapes that feel very Hopper-esque, kind of turns me on, and it kind of stirs my imagination, if you will.
Perfect locations for genre films too. So there you go.
It's true.
When was the last time you were at the beach?
I live on the beach, so I'm pretty much every day.
That sounds fantastic. So that's the good way for that's the good lockdown stories.
Yeah, I'm a Jersey Shore guy. As a matter of fact, when I sold my company to Disney, we rolled up into corporate and worked directly with Bob Iger. And there was 2 conditions. One, you can't fire the people who hung with me during the lean years, and 2, I don't want to move from the Jersey Shore. So he said, "Do you mind traveling?" And I said, "No." So basically, I was in California every 2 weeks. So I'm extremely comfortable in Los Angeles and California, but I'm a Jersey boy through and through.
That sounds fantastic. Have you ever spent an entire day in bed? Sounds like not, because of how much of a workaholic you are, but maybe you're in bed editing and thinking and whatnot.
Like a flu, maybe. Very happy if I could, as long as I have Turner Classic Movies. When I was in Romania shooting Perkins for Lionsgate, the guy came in special and he hooked up Turner Classic Movies for me, which is kind of my go-to. It's funny. When I shot Dark Ride at Universal, there was 2 movies I watched every night, and don't ask me why, but I would watch Master and Commander and The Who's Time. And so they're very different kinds of films, but that combination of Master and Commander and Tommy was like Ambien for me, and it was the only thing that would let me get to sleep. So I literally watched it for 40 nights. It was crazy.
And that is quite a ritual, because I think Master Commander is over 2 hours long, right? It's like 2 hours
Yeah,
and 10 minutes or something. That's,
yeah,
I mean,
it's a
it's
long.
a fantastic movie. I love that movie, but
Yeah, that would be first, and then I'd put on Tommy, and I'd probably fall asleep to Tommy.
yeah, to adjust back up. But um, what was the last bar you went to?
The last bar I went to was we had an after party called the Moxie that's run by the Tao Group in New York City, and that was just there the other night. I'm not really a bar guy, but I had to thank some people and do some shout outs and a couple of shots, and then it was good. We were really fortunate. Michael Jordan has a new tequila company that was like kind of a sponsor, so we had this amazing tequila, and we had a couple shots, and it was a good time had by all, as they say.
That sounds fantastic. Yeah, I mean that you had the premiere. You should go to a bar after and celebrate. This is quite an accomplishment.
Yeah, I'm sure.
So in the film, there's a letter that's featured prominently. It comes up a couple times and is eventually read. When was the last time that you wrote or received a letter, like a handwritten mailed letter?
I think I wrote a letter to one of my kids about a month ago. Not very often, but it's kind of a lost art. You realize how little we write when you try to write, because it's almost, you're writing like a second grader. So it's kind of a lost art. Everybody's kind of spoiled by technology and emails. But yeah, not too long ago, it was kind of a nice experience.
That is a good point. It is tough to kind of think of how to like write essentially a one-sided conversation, right? Because we're so used to like question answer, or some like back and forth, and so having to write, put something on paper that is self-contained and then send it off is a very different experience.
I forgot how to write a script Z. I forgot like thinking, I was like, how the fuck do you write a script Z? And it was crazy, but yeah, it's like muscle memory, like anything else, right? You gotta do.
Exercise it. When was the last time you had deja vu?
I have it all the time. I have deja vu. There was a period of time where I would look at clock, speaking of 6:45, and there was like a certain time on the clock that would always kind of haunt me. And I used to like research it and Google it and try to find out the numerical significance of these three numbers. And that was for years and years and years. Hasn't happened lately, but very eerie when stuff like that happens, because you're wondering if somebody's trying to give you kind of a message from beyond, or if there's some kind of a paranormal thing.
Well, it's good to hear that you exercise those demons in 6:45. You left it all in, the Jersey Shore bed and breakfast. That's where that ghost ended up. So,
well, it was rumored to be haunted, and actually, Michael had something. I don't know if he shared this with you when you spoke to him, but he felt like something pressing down on him, like a presence.
oh wow,
And he was fucking around. He was being dead serious, and it's a very, very old being, the 1800s. So you never know what kind of afterlife spirit karma exists, but it had quite a lot of character, I will say that.
I don't remember if he said that. He did tell me that there was one time when they woke up and like their blinds closed somehow, and they were like, it was not like a simple blind, like not something that could easily be moved, and they have no idea what it was. So
Yeah, no, I believe things like that occur. I feel like you have to be open to it and tap into it sometimes more so than others. But yeah, I believe like we certainly don't have all the answers.
yeah, I'm very certain that I don't have all the answers. So who am I to say it doesn't exist, right? So the film is coming out August 6th, 2021 in 75 Regal theaters. So it might be playing near you, but the film is, once it's out, I assume you're going to be promoting it, but what's next for you? Do you have other projects that you're going to be switching to after this film is finally out in the world?
Yeah, I'm prepping a film called TAT. I should be shooting that hopefully this fall, but we're just started casting. I'll be working with a lot of the same folks that I collaborated with on 6:45. It's an extremely dark script, much darker than 6:45, believe it or not, and to dig into that.
Well, awesome. I'm excited to check out that, and for everyone else, 6:45 is coming August 6th, 2021. So thank you so much for talking to me.
Hey, thank you, and good luck on your congratulations. I hear your site's really exploding, and bravo.
That's great to hear. Thank you. Yeah, it's
That's fantastic. If there's anything to help you, let me know.
That sounds fantastic. Thank you.
You got it, man. Talk to you soon.
Talk soon.